Deism. I am your host, David Robertson. Thank you so much for being a part of the program and sharing the videos with your friends and family and just getting involved. I mean, it's always good to expand your knowledge. And I think, I should hope that these videos are helping in that mission. I was reading an op-ed piece recently in the Daily Times out of Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and I was disturbed, I think, for lack of better words, and I want to read this to you. For more tolerant Enlightenment thinkers, this is just a little section, obviously, not the entire piece. He was talking about religion in general. Anyway, he says, for more tolerant Enlightenment thinkers, the one acceptable religion was deism, a religion based on whatever humans think. For deists, the more religion is cleansed of supernatural beliefs and focused only on human thinking, the greater its value. The person Jesus is snubbed, his teachings rejected, his deeds ignored, and his promises passed over. Toward the opposite end of the religion spectrum is Catholicism. Well, like I said, this was a much bigger piece, but I took that section out because if ever I needed an example of blatant ignorance in paragraph form, I think this would be it. My advice to anybody referencing deism, if you're going to talk about it, know what you're talking about. That's a good start. First and foremost, deism is not based on whatever human beings think. It's based on natural law, which is clearly observed. We do not subscribe to any watered down or cleansed religion. We follow God, and that's it. 3, Jesus is not snubbed. In fact, I would say we often find that many of the teachings of Jesus to be deist in nature. And I'm sure he was a great person, no doubt. He obviously did a lot of great things for a lot of people. And I don't think deists, for the most part, we don't marginalize that. We just don't take it much further than that, plain and simple. In fact, one could say that deists as a whole have kind of taken the teachings of a lot of different religions to an extreme. And let me explain this, and I'm going to do this by reference. Romans 6:13. Do not let any part of your body become an instrument of evil to serve sin. Instead, give yourselves completely to God, for you were dead, but now you have new life. So use your whole body as an instrument to do what is right for the glory of God. Now, of course, that's a passage from the Bible, and it says clearly, to give yourself completely to God. Now, see, here's the irony of it. So I look at the whole situation of religion, and I see revealed religions, these different religious doctrines, as more of a compass, if you will, a place to guide you. Well, it's my contention, and I've said this a few times, how many times do you have to read a warning label before it sticks in your head? Well, I don't know. And by the way, I could probably do this with, and I know for a fact I could, for several different revealed religions, including Islam and including Judaism. Man, in my opinion, is usually the instrument of sin, as seen numerous times throughout history, throughout the world, especially in religious context. Deists have eliminated, that as a whole, and we've simply given ourselves to God and embraced our gifts. And I think that's the biggest part. God gave us the gift of reason. We embrace that as a whole. And we use our entire being, especially our gifts, to experience nature and to listen to God's rule. And that's really kind of how you have to boil that down. Look, if you're a Christian and you're watching this, I mean, look in the Bible. Look at Romans 6:13. It says, plain and simple, give yourself to God, completely to God. And that's what deists have done. We recognize God. We don't continue to look at and I'm not saying that the Bible is necessarily flawed. I mean, once again, freedom of religion. Everybody's free to believe what you want. But we've taken that advice to the extreme. We've eliminated anything man-made in our faith and given ourselves completely to God based on faith. We have faith that God is telling us to do the right thing, and that's really what it boils down to. And let's explore this for a second. The distinction between natural law in the political and legal sense, and and law of nature, or physical law, in the scientific sense, is more or less a modern one. But both concepts being equally derived from physis, the Greek word, which of course was translated into natura for nature. Physis and natura, they both mean the same thing, nature. Natural law has many definitions, as you've probably noticed in your research. But let's keep it simple. Natural law is a code of rules which originates with the divine, nature, or reason, in contrast to the laws people make, be it legal or religious. Now, let's go back a little bit. Let's look at Cicero. Cicero defines natural law as true law, which he says, quote, is right reason in agreement with nature. It is of universal application, unchanging and everlasting. It summons to duty by its commands and averts from wrongdoing by its prohibitions. It is a sin to try and alter this law, nor is it allowable to repeal any part of it, and it is impossible to abolish entirely. We cannot be freed from its obligations by Senate or people, and we need not look outside ourselves for an expounder or interpreter of it. And there will not be different laws at Rome and Athens, or different laws now and in the future, but one eternal and unchangeable law will be valid for all nations and all times. And there will be one master and ruler, that is God, over us all, for he is the author of this law, and its enforcing judge. Whoever is disobedient is fleeing from himself and denying his human nature, and by reason of this very fact, he will suffer the worst punishment. To me, that really sums it up. Cicero, I think, nailed it on the head. But simplest terms, it's the law that exists when a church official or government authority isn't around to necessarily enforce the law. These exist, period. And then that's really what it boils down to. So characteristics of these laws that deists follow, both in nature and in physics, are as follows. True, at least within their regime of validity. By definition, there have never been repeatable contradicting observations. They're universal, they're simple, they're absolute, they're stable, they're omnipotent, which, everything in the universe apparently must comply with them. Generally conservative of quantity, often expressions of existing symmetries of space and time. Basic stuff, all right? Natural law. I mean, you could look at, the laws of physics are pretty much the same thing. Natural law is eternal. Here's another little definition for you. Is right of reason, helps one choose the right, cannot be altered or abolished, cannot be changed by the Senate or the people, the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It is universal. It is written by one who is eternal. It is the source of reason, wants us to choose the right, is unchangeable, is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, is master of the universe. It is written and given by God. This law cannot be altered, repealed, abandoned, or abolished. Though the legislators of the people themselves may pretend to do so, they are not changing the eternal consequences they will face in breaking these laws. Natural law is abundant or absolute truth and reality. It is basic, it is simple, it is easy to comprehend, it is totally correct and morally right. It is the law of God. Now that's pretty much reiterating what Cicero said. It's more of a modern term, modern definition. But we look at this and we can see it throughout, throughout the world. We see it in the foundation of the United States. Let me read this. The separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How many of you are familiar with that? Of course, we hear the last part. Very few reference the front. But that's a very deist ideology. Okay, these are basic laws. So imagine for a second that you're out in the wilderness. Okay, you're out there, you're by yourself for the most part. Maybe there's a few other people scattered around the area, but there's not really government. There's not really any laws. Nobody there to enforce man-made laws. It's just you and God, essentially, maybe a few others, okay? Ask yourself the following question. Do you have the right at that point for self-governance? I mean, are you going to wake up and try to dictate your own life? Of course. What about the right to self-defense? You know, something happens, maybe one of these other wanderers come through. No one's there to protect you. You have to protect yourself. Do you have the right to self-defense? Of course. The right to own, develop, and dispose of property. You're going to acquire stuff. You're going to make stuff. Do you have the right to have that? Of course. The right to personal choice. Obviously, no one else is going to be there to make decisions for you. The right of free conscience. You know, obviously, you know, you're going to make your own decisions. Nobody else is there to dictate that for you. You can choose your own workload. The right, I mean, you could, well, yeah, you could reference that into right of profession. The right to choose a mate. Maybe one of these other people from the surrounding areas, they have somebody that you're interested in. You know, you have the right to have that mate. The right to assemble. Maybe you want to get everybody together to have a barbecue or something. The right to petition. The right to free speech. I mean, obviously, you're a voice. You're by yourself. No one there can stop you. You have the right to talk. What about enjoying the fruits of your labor? I mean, you're out there by yourself. Maybe you build a house. Do you have a right to enjoy that house? Of course. Improve one's position through barter and sale. The other people out there, hey, he's really good at building this. You're really good at building that. You guys can trade. The right to contrive and invent. Well, explore the natural resources around you, of course. Privacy, absolutely. Personal security, it kind of goes into self-protection. You know, natural necessities, air, food, water, clothing, shelter. You know, if you have the means to go about and get it, make it, of course, absolutely. Maybe you have to hunt, so you're going to eat. You may use the fur as clothing, what have you. Free association, right to contract. Look, these are all ideas, and what's funny is I more or less boiled down some of the rights. These are natural rights. These are what the founders of the United States were talking about. Obviously, a lot of them were deists and had deist influences. And this is what we're talking about. These are natural rights, and we have these. They're great examples of natural rights. And if you want to get complex about it, we could go even further. We could say some of the more famous laws of nature were found in Isaac Newton's theories of classical mechanics, or Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. These are natural laws. These are things that exist, period. And when a church official or government official isn't there, these are still the laws. Laws of gravity, of course, you know, we're talking about classical mechanics, but law of gravity. If a government official is not there and a church official isn't there, it's still the law. It's still there, period. That's a natural law. So basically what we've done as deists is we've taken out the proverbial middleman. Okay, so we don't need man to tell us that these laws exist, and we will follow these laws. We know that the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness exists, because if government officials and church officials aren't there, we still get to do it, period. And that's more or less what I mean, we have given ourselves to God. We listen to the rules of God. And, you know, I think as deists, we have morals. In fact, I would say unusually strong sense of morals. You know, we have a strong moral compass because we have, I would say as a whole, substantial intellect. You know, we can recognize this. We don't need somebody else to tell us, well, you know, gravity's still here. Yeah, we got that. We figured that out a long time ago. Probably when we fell off our bike, you know, as a child. Anyway, we've just taken the advice of many of the prophets and literally and substantially and totally given ourselves to God. And we apply the reason. We apply these gifts that we've been given and exercise them, you know, as we believe that God would want it. And like I said, we've eliminated all the quote-unquote rules and regulations that man has tried to invent for religion, and taken our faith to a new level by getting rid of, well, the hypocrisies, if you will. And it's our contention that, you know, and I would say as a whole, that many religious documents, doctrines, if you will, are flawed. And it's because man made them. They wrote them. They interpreted them. You know, when you look at the laws of nature, there's not even an opportunity to play middleman or play telephone, if you will. We're not going to mess it up because it's the exact same thing. We all know about the law of gravity. or eventually we'll figure it out. As a child, yeah, you don't necessarily know the law exists, but you do recognize the fact that if you mess up, you're going to fall down. And we also recognize, too, that the teachings of a lot of the religious documents and doctrines, they vary depending on who's teaching them. Once again, it boils down to interpretation. Why? Because man is the one teaching them. So the message can be skewed. The message really in natural law has a hard time being skewed. And even if it is skewed temporarily, eventually people will figure it out. And I just want to kind of advance this idea too. Many houses of God, churches, temples, synagogues, etc., they're flawed. They take your money and then turn around and judge you when you make a mistake. Why? Because they are built by man, controlled by man, and filled by man. And once again, deists as a whole have just kind of taken man out of the equation. It's not about what we think, it's about what we can observe. What has God provided? Okay, look at this. Everybody can see that it's here. And we know that to be a fundamental right, or a natural law, if you will. We essentially look at the rules that cannot be broken. They're universal. We celebrate diversity because there's diversity in nature. We don't chastise somebody for being different. We don't chastise somebody for having a different belief or a different idea. We celebrate it. I don't know. We try hard not to judge one for making mistakes because we accept that we make our own. You'll see me make plenty of mistakes in my videos. Sometimes I stutter. I'm not perfect. And speaking of perfect, we don't pretend to be perfect. Because we recognize we're just getting started. And, okay, I don't know if it's a point in case, but it's definitely something to consider. Those of you with a strong handle on language would understand what I said there. Let me reiterate it. We don't pretend to be perfect because we understand we're just getting started. We don't pretend that somebody's going to go to hell for having a different point of view or a different belief system. Instead, I would say that we seek out a better understanding of the different viewpoint so we can further expand our own knowledge and experience of that belief. We don't pretend to have all the answers. I sure don't. Because we know, and I would say we more or less understand, that the information may change over time and with a different understanding. As knowledge expands, I would say the understanding of that information has changed. Look at Ben Franklin, for crying out loud. I referenced this in one of my last videos, where Ben Franklin knew that there was a natural reason for the phenomena of thunder and lightning. And he figured it out. So it changed the understanding. The information changed. It was no longer God's wrath. It was electricity. And it's the same thing. So we expect, and maybe that's the thing, we expect for the information to change as our understanding grows. And we sure don't insist on telling one how to live their lives. Or pretending that, hey, I know what's best. You should live your life this way. Because nobody knows the circumstances of your life better than you do. But as deists, what we do is we mentor one another. Try to provide some insight and help our fellow man out. Obviously when asked, we don't thrust our knowledge or information or mentoring capabilities onto another. We just provide it when it's wanted and needed. So let me boil this down. I put some talking notes here so you have an idea of really kind of how this boils down for me. And I've been asked this several times, and I appreciate the interaction. Anyway, deism isn't about what we think. It's about what we can observe. It's not based on my thoughts or your thoughts per se. It's based on what God has demonstrated abundantly and repeatedly. It's not even really about how to live your life per se. I'd say it's more about learning about how not to live your life. And we can do that through observation of the mistakes and errors of others. I would say it's because we're looking to better ourselves and our society. We don't want to remain stagnant and repressed. And that's, I think, probably a really good way to look at that. And essentially, once again, we give ourselves to God. We understand we're a product of nature. We understand that nature influences our day-to-day lives. And we understand that God created nature. So that's what we follow. Excuse me. And as a religion, as a faith, we don't want your money. We're not selling salvation. We don't have a limited number of seats to sell. What we're doing is we're providing an opportunity for you to set yourself free. To set yourself free from the constraints of man and give yourself 100% to God. We don't want you to conform your beliefs to any set doctrine or anything, or somebody else's interpretation, or I don't know. We don't want you to be able to be guilted into believing a certain way. Essentially, as deists, we don't have a bunch of confusing doctrines full of hypocrisies and contradictions. Once again, the laws that we follow as a whole, they're true, universal, simple, absolute, stable, omnipotent, generally conservative of quantity, often expressions of existing symmetries of space and time. They're simple, they're universal. Everybody can recognize them. Deism offers understanding and knowledge and perpetual expansion. I think that's a really good way to look at that. It offers a relationship, or an understanding, I should say, with God that remains between you and God. And I've talked about this too, that you get a bunch of deists in the room, you're going to have varying degrees of deist beliefs. It really is between you and God. And when you have the knowledge and the capability to understand the complexities of the universe, you're going to change and expand on your belief. And that's really kind of what it is. So essentially, I don't know, like I said, that op-ed piece kind of bothered me. And there are people of influence, people who are writing articles who are putting a bad spin on what deism is, mainly because they don't understand it. And once again, that's one of the big pieces of Devout Deism, this channel, these videos, is to help people get a better understanding of deism. It's not a bad thing. Look, it's been around for a long, long time. And the ideas and the belief system that more or less makes up deism has been around for even longer. I mean, these are things that have been expanded on and put together and experienced time and time again for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, if not longer. So, hopefully this expands the knowledge base of my interpretation of deism, and hopefully it helps you expand your definition of deism. I've seen in several spots where people who are deists, they have a hard time trying to explain it. Hopefully these videos help you explain your position a little bit better. So this has been another edition of Devout Deism, ladies and gentlemen. Be a part of the conversation. Leave some comments, good or bad, and by all means, help spread the information. So that's all I got for today, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time.